Hello and welcome back to the Herb Doctor podcast with me, Caitríona Hegarty, and Dr. Dilis Clare. Good afternoon, Dilis. How are you?
I'm good, Caitríona.
What is the podcast all about today?
The frame of reference is the Doctrine of Signatures.
Okay.
And I'm speaking about it because it's one of the little mini themes that arose while writing the book Uprooted Medicine. So I'd like to talk about it in terms of how herbal medicine has been sidelined. As we said, one way of sidelining herbal medicine, there are many ways of sidelining them, but some of the ways of sidelining herbal medicine has been to make it invisible. We can't see, don't read about, don't hear about, and don't see practiced at home, or when we go for professional help just doesn't exist. So therefore we don't have to deal with it, we don't have to discredit it, we don't have to do anything. But herbal medicine is one of those things that never goes away. And one of the reasons is because if I was to have a motto, it would be, people ask me, why do I practice herbal medicine? I say, because herbs work. But there are agents of skepticism, but skepticism not in a way of questioning things. By this, I mean people who raise issues of skepticism outside of a balance. They're not looking out of curiosity, they're looking for a purpose to discredit herbal medicine, a variety of reasons, many of them sometimes not even apparent to themselves. It's a belief system. And belief systems, just because we believe something doesn't mean it's true, okay? Because not all beliefs can be true. Once herbal medicine starts rising above a parapet of invisibility, then we have various ways of making sure that it doesn't become successful again. It has been very successful in the past because it was the only medicine. Right? For most of human history, it was the only medicine. So it wasn't herbal medicine, it was just medicine. Once it's risen above to a level of visibility, then it's declared ineffective. Herbs don't work. Okay. I say because herbs work, they say herbs don't work. Both are belief systems. Which one is true? There are elements of both that are true. So they declare that they're ineffective, but they've no evidence that it's ineffective, that herbs are ineffective, because there might not be the evidence done. Nobody's ever done the trials, the epidemiological studies, to the point where these skeptics are satisfied. Because one of the problems with evidence is how much evidence is enough evidence. And as far as herbal medicine is concerned, all the evidence is suspect and none of it is ever enough. Okay? So an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Say that again.
An absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's an anonymous quote. It's a frequent quote, but I can't find out who it's ascribed to in the beginning.
Okay.
As the original. So they also declare that it's ineffective, yet extracts of herbs are the source for about somewhere between 40 and 60% of all the drugs that are used by the current medical system. So you can't have something that's ineffective and a source for all of these drugs at the same time. So I have evidence that they're effective.
Brilliant.
In addition to all of these strands of evidence that they don't count as being enough. So we have lots of different kinds of evidence. Then if people are still persisting despite invisibility and being declared ineffective by establishment agencies of the establishment. That's a better way of putting it. Then the next layer of sidelining is that they're dangerous.
Okay.
But it's very hard for something to be ineffective and dangerous at the same time, all right? It is possible because there are, of course, poisonous plants. But to say that, to make declarations that all herbal medicines are ineffective and there are serious dangers because of toxic and dangerous plants, when in fact the risk of danger is usually of accidental poisoning of children. No evidence of dangers in the hands of herbalists. The biggest dangers are, even within those, are from supplements to do with weight loss and sports enabling and all of those things which don't represent home herbal medicine or professional herbal medicine. So the danger card is brought out. if that doesn't make us wary of using herbs, then we call into account the reputability of those who practice it. Herbalists are not professionals. I can't tell you the efforts that have been made by herbalists to be regulated, all of which are cast aside, often after major amounts of work being done. Despite the evidence of an absence of harm, when people go to herbalists, they do not fill casualty departments. They do not fill coffins. There are very few body bags, if none. So calling the practitioners disreputable is a disreputable thing to do. Then they're getting into dangerous waters now, because people are still interested in using herbal medicine despite all these strategies. So then you start talking about snake oil and patent medicine, and going back to the history, when the history actually shows that it was the licensed doctors who were practicing very dangerous medicine in terms of repeatedly bleeding people and purging people and using the characteristic of licensed medicine is a very strong effect. Now, that's often very useful, but for it to be a trademark of it is not necessarily always a good thing.
Wow.
That's what I can say. So labeling things as snake oil is a low blow, really. Now, that's not to say that there are not disreputable people among herbalists, or that there are not disreputable products. Is there any system that's engaged with the human condition which is not characterized by those things? No, I don't think so. Whether you're talking about bank managers, politicians, factory owners, teachers, clerics, there's disreputable people in every walk of life, right? Thankfully, they're not in the majority. And then when all of these things and these are multi-layered and intermingling with each other, right? Then it is, it's just the placebo effect. And I have a confession to make, Caitríona. When I started off thinking about doing herbal medicine, I presumed that if they did have any effect, it would be the placebo effect. So the herbs about to put manners on me. So I can quite understand this. However, there's no evidence that the majority effect of herbal medicine is due to a placebo. No. There's no evidence that placebos are ineffective. In fact, there's plenty of evidence that placebos are effective, right? With very few side effects. But the other thing that's overlooked is the placebo effect is a feature of all medicines. So, for instance, when you take analgesics, 60% for pain, 60% of that is due to the fact that you've empowered yourself to take a product. If it's endorsed and even prescribed by the doctor, then that adds more power to the placebo effect. It's more relevant to some conditions more than others. Pain is one where it has a very big impact. So the placebo effect is not only a benefit from herbal medicine, it's a benefit for all medicines and for all therapeutic interventions, including being listened to, has an amazing effect. Okay, one of the differentials between the placebo effect and medicinal effect is the placebo effect doesn't last for the long haul. It's a short-term effect, and then gradually people lose interest, and by 3 to 6 months later, they're no longer using it. Whereas that's not true for products that actually have a medicinal action independent of the placebo effect. And there was another thing on my mind, which was a differential as well. Oh yes, the dose-response curve can be shown for a lot, where the evidence does exist. A lot of evidence supports a dose response, which is specific to a medicinal effect as opposed to a placebo. Unless, of course, you're accompanying it with, now this is an even stronger pill, right? In which case it has a stronger effect because of the expectation, right? So to see how many nuances there are in there. But all of these things are systematically, if you look at every iteration where herbal medicine has raised its head above the parapet and become useful, then all of these things are brought into play.
Wow.
So if you start reading articles in The Guardian saying that herbs are toxic and dangerous, and turmeric, this is one I've recently written an article about in response to a Guardian, which is a broadsheet newspaper, saying that turmeric is toxic and dangerous, used in the same proportions where it's used commonly for current culinary purposes throughout Asia. Okay, so there's just big holes. And after reading this book, Uprooted Medicine, you will begin to recognize this. And you go, how dangerous is it? And what are they comparing it to? Like, for instance, if you have 3 case reports on this side effect, a significant side effect of, we'll invent a plant, Murinella multiparis, right? Which is a very fertile plant, for those who know Latin. Anyway, so this is a fictional plant. And there's 3 case histories saying this is a significant side effect. And you read an article that says there's 100% increase. That's another 3 cases of a story, a narrative, against a background of people using this herb half a teaspoon a day or 2 teaspoons a day throughout Asia. All right, or throughout South America. Can you see the perspective? When case history is a story, it's a narrative. If you gain enough narratives, then you get curious and you start looking for a mechanism of action.
That's right.
If you find a mechanism of action, then you have a stronger case than just the case histories. And so the evidence base links further and further. The biggest influence on the evidence is the budget for research. That's the biggest. So, yeah. So we have all those systems, and within all of these systems of discrediting herbal medicine or silencing it, making it invisible, then what you do is you pick what you consider to be ridiculous things about that system of medicine, and you go, look, this is inconsequential. These are people who believe in things that are totally unscientific and irrational. And one of those is the Doctrine of Signatures. So the Doctrine of Signatures is a description, it's another story, it's a description of how the physical characteristics of a plant give an indication that that herb is used for a particular condition. Okay? At the time the Doctrine of Signatures was being described by outsiders, if you like, from the herbal traditional schools, it would have been ascribed to divine guidance, right? So this would have been during medieval times. And we know that it was written by outsiders because the insiders couldn't write. They would have been illiterate. So it's described by the outsiders. So there's already a level of distance from it. So it's described as coming from and as a divine clue, right? To help people with suffering, right? So for an example is borage. Borage, the whole plant is used, but the flower is a particularly pretty blue flower. It's used for courage. You'll often hear borage for courage, in the same way as you hear rosemary for remembrance. There are lots of these little pithy expressions. So it's used for melancholy and it's used for courage. It's used for dispiritedness, especially when people are dealing with very hard to solve problems. So they are the black seeds represent the melancholy and the dispiritedness and the shadow side of people's experience. So that's one example of the Doctrine of Signatures. Another is if you hold up the medicinal St. John's wort, which is Hypericum perforatum, and the perforatum refer to the holes at the underside. If you look at the underside of the leaf up towards the sky, you see translucent, and this was an indication that it was useful for the skin because this looked like skin pores. That's right. We would have imagined the skin to breathe. So St. John's wort was indicated for skin issues. So is there any truth to these things? And how would we know? Okay, so we're going to review these in the light of history. In the light of history, the taste, the aroma, the texture were much, much more relevant to what the medicinal properties were. Did they taste pungent? Was it an aroma from volatile oils? Was there a resin which indicates that it's likely to be an antiseptic? Because all those resins are antiseptic. Nearly a lot of those aromas are actually therapeutic. So this gave a much more of an idea as to whether this was likely to be a medicinal plant and what it might be likely to be useful for. The next point is that the Doctrine of Signatures describes an association following the use of a herb for medicinal issues, not the discovery of medicinal properties of herbs. So it's one of those chicken and egg situations. So it's an association rather than this is a divine inspiration as to what medical condition would be caused. And the next point is that this was primarily used to describe remembering. From prehistory until reading and writing was a major part of the population's experience. Anybody who was involved in healing using the traditional routes would have been trained over 10 to 15 years commonly, and everything to do with medicine, healing, plants, people, therapeutics, growing herbs, harvesting them, swapping stories with the country next door, everything to do with them, how they grow in relation to the stars, when they're to be harvested according to the moon, whether they're likely to grow in coastal regions, up one side of a mountain, another side of a mountain. So all of this would have to be held in your little head. Wow. There was no Google in those days. No. There weren't even textbooks. So if you had to remember that vast amount of knowledge and be rigorously tested on it by the healing tradition schools, then you would be very glad of remembering that the black seeds in the borage related to melancholy, because we remember by stories.
Yes.
All right. So then we come to, is there any truth according to our current cosmology, which does not invoke divine references? And we find out that St. John's wort is nutritive and balancing for the nervous system, and it's also a wound healing herb. The wound healing would have been very important during medieval times when infected wounds were a common cause of death. And eczema is a skin disorder that is consistently aggravated by stress. I don't know if you know anybody in your life who has eczema. Does it get worse with stress? Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah, I imagine.
And St. John's wort aids the quality of sleep. And this is where we do most of our healing. All right. So there's good reasons for taking St. John's wort during a flare-up of your eczema. The whole plant, the flowers, the leaves, you put it in an oil, medium. It can be sweet almond oil would be a common one to use, even olive oil. And you put it in a sunny windowsill and it'll gradually turn red and red and red and red and redder. And that's when you know that the active ingredient of the oil has transformed the oil.
That's a great tip, actually. That's
Yeah.
a great tip. And apart from the likes of, eczema and stuff, general skin conditions, obviously it can be used as well.
Well, you wouldn't use it as an everyday moisturize. You would use it if there's any superficial grazes or inflammation. It's used for inflammation.
So it's more an inflammation.
Yeah.
Oil. Okay.
Yeah. But used as a medicine internally, then it would be to calm down the stress and promote a healthy sleep.
Brilliant.
Because that's what heals the skin from the inside.
That's amazing.
The other thing about this book, this is a great example of how reading this book kind of gives you the strength of mind to look past the skeptical approach to herbal medicine. Skeptic with a capital S, as in these people have no interest in presenting a balanced picture. So this book is about the history of how herbs were lost. so that when you go to reclaim them, you read the beneficial aspect. And there are many, many books, many hundreds of books. Over the years, people have said to me, oh, you should write a book about the herbs and the herbal medicine. And the story behind this book is that I had written a book about osteoarthritis. And then I realized I could write about, the cat sitting on the moon, but why would people believe it? Why would people believe that herbal medicine works when their doctor doesn't use them, their mother didn't use them, they don't have reference to it in any of the schooling or education that we have? So why would people believe it? That's why I started writing this book. Now I can write the book about the osteoarthritis. Having written this, I will go, I expect you all to believe that herbal medicines work, because I have written the reasons why you might be skeptical about it with a small s. I entirely approve of small s skepticism, curiosity about herbal medicine, medical lack of curiosity about herbal medicine. I would say speaks a lot about those who have determined medical policies for medical schools and governments.
Very interesting.
I believe in collaboration.
Yeah, and this is what the book is all about as well.
Yeah.
Working with the two, obviously. What a book. An unbelievable book.
Yeah.
Unbelievable book. Anything else from you?
Yeah. Maybe the next book will be called The Happy Herbalist. Because herbs work.
They do work.
Great.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Anything else from you, Dilis?
No?
Thank you for exploring the Uprooted Medicine book and the Doctrine of Signatures with Dr. Clare. We've taken a journey through the roots of medicine, looking at how plants, tradition and observation healing long before modern systems took hold. If you like this podcast and you like listening to us and going through all the episodes, we would love your feedback. And we do want to say thank you so much for your feedback, for the comments that you're leaving on the streams that we're getting. We really appreciate it. And we only want to make this podcast better and grow it into the new year as well. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to get in touch with us in any way at all, comment or questions or anything that you'd like Dr. Dilis to talk about, please get in touch through all platforms and social media. And we will talk to you soon. And thank you so much, Dilis. It's been a really interesting podcast today listening to you. I've really enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.